just so that if anybody loses the call or things don't go well, we will have, we're going to try to put that on the SLUH YouTube page, the SLUH College Counseling YouTube page sometime tomorrow. So you can go back and watch if there's any little pieces that we missed. I want to do one introduction on behalf of the team. As you have seen in newsletters that Mrs. Kate Kinbaum is retiring, she's graciously agreed to stay on until January 12th, but with a new departure means we have a new hire. Mr. Tim Wilms is going to jump on here and wave. Hi, Tim. Thanks for being here. Is joining us as the new Mrs. Kinbaum. Not really, nobody can replace her. But Tim's going to do a great job as a new college counselor. He comes from the admission side with, I think, 7 years of experience at Xavier University. He's been our rep forever, and he's an alum of SLUH, class of 2010.
2010, that's right.
There we go.
Yep.
I got it all. I'm going to get this down eventually. But so we're really excited to have him joining us. So if Mrs. Kinbaum is your college counselor, she is in the building until the 12th. Mrs. Kinbaum, sorry, I didn't mean that could jump on, but she is in the building until the 12th, and will be helping out getting Tim up to speed. But when your sons get back for projects, if they have any questions, concerns, thoughts, all those good things, they would be reaching out to Mr. Wilms, who will help shepherd them through their final transcript sending and any of those final conversations that they may have. Again, we're super excited to have him here, and we wish Mrs. Kinbaum a great good luck. We'll send this out announcement in an email. I believe we had that slated for tomorrow. All right. But tonight's not about college, the college counseling team. Tonight's about financial aid. So I am going to turn over the presentation and the evening to Miss Erin Gallagher. She is the new student coordinator for student financial services at St. Louis University. I pray I got all those words in the right order, and hopefully we're close enough there. But she is going to walk us through a presentation, give us an update on what's going on with the FAFSA, and she'll let you know how to handle any questions that might come up, and her team member here will take care of that. So I'm going to mute myself and hide in the background, but thank you all again, sincerely, for being here. It's awesome to see everyone here. And if you need anything after the presentation, of course, send your college counselor an email, and we're more than happy to help out. So take it away, Erin.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and you did get everything right. So I will be giving the presentation this evening, and my colleague Hannah Smith will be answering questions in the chat. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put those in the chat, and she'll answer them as we go. But we'll also have time at the end of the presentation as well for any questions to get those answered then too. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and then just to confirm that y'all can see that, if someone could come unmuted because I can't see.
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about the FAFSA this evening. As Kevin mentioned, Hannah and I are from Student Financial Services at St. Louis University, and we give these presentations to the community just to kind of keep people educated and also just be a public resource. So if there's any questions after this evening, our contact information will be available at the end of this presentation. So do not hesitate to reach out to us, as we are available to you tonight and then in the future. To kind of give you an agenda of what we're going to be talking about this evening, we're going to start with types of financial aid. We're going to go through FAFSA eligibility, creating that FSA ID, the Federal Student Aid Identification, walking through the FAFSA itself, as well as a timeline, and then that Q&A. This presentation is about 70 to 75 slides, so buckle in. We will be here for a little while, and we appreciate you taking this time out of your evening to sit with us. So to start with those different types of financial aid, there's two main groups. There's gift aid and self-help aid. You and your student are going to want to focus on that gift aid side, so those scholarships and grants. Scholarships will be merit-based scholarships. Typically, they get those when they're applying to an institution and receive their admission letter. It'll also include that merit-based scholarship. Any talent-based scholarships, things that come to mind are like band scholarships, theater scholarships, chorus scholarships, things like that. as well as any athletic aid if they're going to be continuing on in any athletic careers. Grants will be need-based from institutions as well as federal and state governments. That's based on filing the FAFSA. With filling out the FAFSA, you can be eligible for the federal Pell Grant and the federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, as well as any state aid. With Missouri, that could be Missouri Bright Flight, Missouri Access, things like that. Then self-help aid. These are those secondary types of financial aid that you and your student could be eligible for or could look at to help finance a college education, starting with loans. Those will be federal direct student loans, a Parent Plus loan, which is also a federal loan just in the parent's name, or private or alternative student loans. Lastly, there's employment opportunities. By filing the FAFSA, your student could be eligible for federal work study, but they can also have an on-campus job that would be non-federal work study. When I was going to school, my first 2 years of college, I had a non-federal work study job. And then my junior and senior year, I qualified for federal work study. So it could change throughout the years as to whether they qualify for federal work study or not by filing, again, that FAFSA. So how do I apply for all of this aid? To start, you apply to your schools that your student is looking at. So that admission application, those will be school-specific merit-based scholarships that are usually determined by GPA and/or test scores. Some schools are test optional for admission, but may require those test scores in order to receive additional scholarships. You'll want to talk to your college admission counselors at each school to determine whether you would need to submit those test scores. I'm sure Mr. Wilms is familiar with that with working at Xavier. I was previously an admission counselor as well, and so was Hannah. So every school is different. So again, be communicating with those admission counselors to determine what you need to submit in order to be eligible for the most aid at each individual school. Then you're going to want to file the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA, which is what we're here to discuss tonight. That will determine any federal aid eligibility, such as those grants of the Pell Grant and the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and then those federal student loans. Lastly, there is the CSS profile. This is required by some colleges and universities, but not all. It does request additional information to determine aid eligibility, and there is a fee involved. So again, you're going to want to be talking to those admission counselors in order to determine if you should be filing the CSS profile and what information they're looking for exactly in order to file that. SLUH specifically does not take the CSS profile, but I know that Washington University in St. Louis does. So be communicating with those different schools to determine what you need to submit in order to be eligible for that most aid. So who is eligible to file the FAFSA? You must be enrolled or accepted for enrollment in an eligible program of study. You must be pursuing a degree, certificate, or other credential at that school. And then you must be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen and have a valid social security number. When should you apply? The FAFSA is available on or before now. It was released on a, I don't want to say rolling basis, what's it called, like a soft launch. I think that's what they're using, is available now. They are having periods of blackout times to fix any bugs or any errors that are occurring. And we as financial services offices are constantly being updated on it. We have received a couple of different resources as of this afternoon on different bugs that they're currently fixing. So I am still in the process of reading through those. But I do know that as they are working on it, there is a waiting room at times to slow down any errors that might be happening. So if you are looking to file the FAFSA, just be cognizant that a waiting room is something that could be possible at the time that you're filing. We are typically anticipating that to be in the evening times or on weekends when most families would have availability to file the FAFSA, since parents would not be at work and students would not be at school. So again, just something to kind of be aware of as you collect everything and get ready to sit down to file the FAFSA. It will be completed in the student's senior year of high school, and most need-based aid is awarded on a first-come, first-served basis. Schools will determine timelines for priority deadlines. As of right now, SLUH specifically is sticking with a February 1st deadline, but we will send out any communication if that were to change. That is just based on state priority deadlines. So Missouri itself has a priority deadline for any state aid of February 1st. So again, something to be cognizant of as you get ready to file the FAFSA. And then it must be completed each year that this student will be enrolled in college. So they'll start filing it their senior year of high school, and then during their freshman, sophomore, and junior years of college to be eligible for aid their sophomore, junior, and senior year. And then so on and so forth if they were to continue into any graduate level coursework. So with the FAFSA simplification process, if any of you have older students, you may have been familiar with what that process looks like. It is changing a little bit for this year. So the expected family contribution, which is the number that is generated by the FAFSA, is now being called the Student Aid Index. And previously, it could only go as low as 0. Now it can go as low as negative 1,500 to determine a higher level of need. The direct data exchange, which is how the IRS would share information with the Department of Education, will now be called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. And the calculation will use student and parent income and assets, and some questions will be different and or excluded. I believe it's about half the questions that it previously had, so it's a little bit easier, less time consuming for families to fill out. So that is something that will look a little bit different compared to previous years if you have filled out previous FAFSAs. And then parents will be invited as contributors to complete their section of the form instead of just completing the form with the student at the same time. What do you need to get started? So first you will need to create that FSA ID. It will take a couple of days for that to be verified. So you'll want to go ahead and get that created now so that you will have enough time for that to be confirmed that that social security number is you as that person so that you can log on to studentaid.gov and file the FAFSA. You'll need about an hour of your time, though, as I mentioned, there could be a waiting room. So something to be anticipating with that as well. And then 2022 tax and income documents for both the parent and student, including federal tax return, W-2s, and any financial records. You'll need current account statements and investment records as of that date, and then the list of schools that your student would like to send the FAFSA to. And they can list up to 20 this year. Previously, it was only 10. So creating that FSA ID, you need to create that prior to filing the FAFSA because it will take 1 to 3 days to authenticate it via the Social Security Administration. Both the student and the parent will need an FSA ID, and it will be the same ID that's used throughout the entirety of the aid process by both the parent and the student. If parents already have an FSA ID, either from filing the FAFSA themselves recently or from filing with a previous student, or an older student, then you will use that same ID. You'll just need to file a different FAFSA for each student since it does use the student information individually. It's important to keep that information distinct, such as not using parent email for student FSA ID or using students' like high school email address for their FSA ID because they will need to continually have access to that account. And the parent will also need to have their own separate account. One more thing to say about those FSA IDs, if parents are married and filed their taxes jointly in 2022, then only one parent needs to file the FAFSA because you will be sharing those financial records all over together. If parents filed separately and are not married or married and filed separately or divorced, etc., then both parents will need an FSA ID. If the parents are divorced, then it will be whichever parent provides more than 51% of financial support for the student during the most recent year. If it's 50-50, then it'll be the parent that has the most income and assets. And then if the parent that is the biological parent that is filing the FAFSA is remarried, then that remarried parent will also, or that step parent will also need to create an FSA ID and have their information included on the FAFSA. So getting into the form itself, you'll go to studentaid.gov and then it'll pull up this lovely website. In the red box there, you can see that it'll say complete the FAFSA form, and then just off to the right of that, it has a bunch of different resources available about the FAFSA form. If the FAFSA is giving you a lot of anxiety, something that you are really stressed about, I would recommend reading through those other resources. Even after going through this presentation tonight, if you're still feeling anxious, definitely read through those just to kind of give you an idea from what the federal government is sharing with us, but we'll go through slide by slide of what the form looks like. So hopefully this is beneficial to you and helps kind of ease some of that anxiety that y'all might have. When you go to the FAFSA website, there will be two different options. There will be start a new form or edit an existing form. If this is your first time starting the FAFSA form, then you'll want to click start a new form, and you'll want to make sure that you're doing it for the 2024-25 aid year. This is because your student will be starting their college education and you're looking for the aid year starting in August of 2024. As of right now, the 23-24 form will, or 23-24 form will still be available. So as you can see, it says need to access last year's form, start or edit 23-24. You're going to want to ignore that because your student will be starting in the 24-25 year. You will log in with your FSA ID, and we're going to go through the student side first. So these are screenshots from the federal government of just a sample student. So it says I'm starting the form as a student. So they're going to click on that, and it's going to give you a couple of screens. It's just an overview of what to expect. So what is the FAFSA form? What are contributors to the FAFSA form? And that's what your student will do to invite you to the form, what to expect with the form, and then what happens after the form. This is some student identity information that they will have put together in their FSA ID. So this is just confirming that all of this is the same, along with getting their permanent mailing address confirmed, and then establishing their state of legal residence. Here it is asking for consent for the IRS to share information from the IRS to the Department of Education for that data retrieval tool. Essentially, if students and parents do not provide consent for this, then they are ineligible to receive any federal aid. So we recommend that everybody provides consent for this in order to be eligible for federal aid. It's not taking any information that the government already doesn't have. It's just sharing it from one department to another. So sharing it from the IRS to the Department of Ed. And this is just kind of a summary of how it will all be used. Then it's going to walk through the student's personal circumstances to determine whether they are a dependent student or an independent student. So it'll ask the student's marital status, and we're recommending that the student and the parent fill out the form together at the same time. As we learned today that they are unable to go back and edit it as of right now. We're hoping that that will change in shortly in the future, but just making sure that everything is lining up and that you are taking close attention to whether it says student or parent at the top of the screen. So if parents are going in accidentally as the student, say they created the student login for whatever reason, and then there's like, oh, well, I am married, but this is asking about the student. So making sure that you are paying close attention to that. Also at the top of this screen, you can see that there's different sections numbered. So you can see your progress throughout the form. The student has 5 sections and the parent has 3. So you can, as we go through this, you'll see how we progress throughout the form. It will ask when the student begins that school year. So in this case, 24-25, what will their college grade level be? For most of you, that will be first-time freshmen or first-year freshmen. If you have any older students, the form will still look like this as well. But then they could be a sophomore or a junior or senior if they are an older student filing the form. And then when they begin this school year, will they have their first bachelor's degree? In most cases, no. But if they are filing it as going to like graduate school and filing the FAFSA, then they would select yes if they already have their bachelor's degree. We have run across this through our school because we offer a 5-year master's of OT and a 6-year doctorate of physical therapy, of students saying, well, I'm going into the DPT program, so doctorate of physical therapy, so I'm going to have my doctorate. So I will be completing like a college graduate level or professional or beyond. That is not the case if they're coming in as a freshman. However, that is different as they start to file it once they actually get to that graduate school level. Then here are some of those personal circumstances to determine that independent or dependent student status. That would include serving on active duty, being a veteran, having children of their own that they support, if they were an orphan, ward of the court, or in foster care, a legally emancipated minor, or in a legal guardianship with someone other than their parent or step-parent. If the student qualifies for any of those, then they could be determined to be an independent student and would be eligible for more aid, and not be required to report parent statuses or parent information on the FAFSA. But again, these are pretty much case-by-case bases and will need to provide verification documents to each school that they apply to in order to confirm that independent status. Another question that could determine independent or dependent status is being unaccompanied in either homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless. And schools have the ability to verify that information or provide documentation, like high schools counselors have been able to support that and provide documentation to us in the past. So again, talk to your counselors if you need any help with that. Or if there are any unusual circumstances that prevent the student from contacting their parents, or if contacting the parents would pose a risk to the student, there's some circumstances listed there that they could provide information for that would determine them to be independent. And then lastly, if they've answered no to all of those questions and they are determined to be a dependent student, however, their parents are not wanting to provide any information for the FAFSA, they could select yes to this question in order to apply for a direct unsubsidized loan only. However, we would like to avoid that in most cases and have parents provide information in order to be eligible for the most federal aid. And then it will walk them through a couple of questions to ask about if their parents' marital status. So in this case, the student said, yes, my parents are married to each other. So then they will need to provide information for their parents and therefore invite them as contributors to this form. They will list both parents' name, date of birth, email address, and social security number in order to get all of that information to invite the parent to the form to be sent over to them. Then the next section is student demographics. So we'll ask questions about the student and the parents. This includes what's the student's gender, if they are transgender, if their race and ethnicity, their citizenship status, and parent education status, as well as if the parent or guardian was killed in the line of duty, their high school completion status, and then what high school they went to, and then just confirming the high school, and then getting into the student's finances. If the student filed a tax return, then some of this information should be imported over, but they can look through their taxes, their tax return information itself to fill in anything that might be missing, such as amount of grants, scholarships, or AmeriCorps benefits reported as income to the IRS, or any foreign earned income exclusions. Their assets, so current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts, current net worth of any businesses or investment firms in the student's name, and then current net worth of investments, including real estate, but excluding the home the student lives in. And then lastly, putting in their college information. They can do this by searching the state and the school name, or by searching by school code. So each school has its own federal school code. As you can see there on the second picture, and that they can input to get their information sent over to the school. There's no really preference as to whether you use the search by searching for the school name or the school code. Then this will confirm the schools. The order does not matter. As long as the school is listed on there, it will be sent to that school. Then it will have you review all of the sections before signing. It is really important that you go through and make sure that everything is correct prior to submitting, as we learned today that as of right now, families cannot go back in to edit the form at this moment. We're hoping that that will change again in the future, but we want to make sure that everything is as correct as possible prior to this submission so that you do not have to go back in and change it later if it's not necessary. It will also confirm that these students are, or these people listed here are the contributors that the student wants to invite to fill out their sections of the parent portion of the form. And then it will have them sign the form stating that, yes, this information is accurate, and yes, it will be used to create the student aid report and using the student aid index information. Then this is saying that congrats, the student section is complete. There are outstanding requirements for the parent contributors to go in and file the form. And then here's what the student should do next. So checking the email to receive an email version of that page, and then making sure that your contributors do go in and complete that. One thing to note is that if a form is deemed inactive after 45 days, then the form itself will be deleted, and the student will need to start over. So we are recommending that students and families complete the form at the same time. So if the student starts it, then immediately after the contributor will get an email, and then the parent starts that right then. This is just to ensure that the form gets completed and everything is submitted and there's no risk of anything being deleted. However, if there is any issues, say the waiting room is too long, something like that, and you need to step away and come back and fill it out at another date, be cognizant of those 45 days because it will be deleted, and we do not want you and your student to have to start over. But what the student can do is just log back into the form and resave it, and then that will count as activity, and the 45 days will start over. But again, just something to be aware of. Best to complete it all together, all in one sitting if possible, just to avoid any of those potential scenarios. So then this is the email that the parent contributor will receive. So I'll use my family as an example. Bridget, Aaron can't be eligible for federal student aid without your input. Help them complete the free application for federal student aid form. And then you'll go in and you'll log in, and you'll use the parent FSA ID that you have already created, same one that you've used if you've logged in previously. But if you have just created a new one, then it will be that ID that you will use for all 4 years, if not longer. It will say you have been requested to be a contributor on the FAFSA form for your student's name. And then if you have any other applications or anything else going on in the federal student aid portal, those will also appear in the portal too. So as you can see here, there's a borrower defense case or a PSLF application available. This is going through just the what to expect, frequently asked questions for the form for the parent view, and just kind of goes through what you would need. It's the same information that we talked at the beginning. So your current account activity information, investment information, federal tax return, W-2s, things like that. Again, that quick overview of what is the FAFSA form, what are contributors, what to expect, and what happens after you complete the form. Again, verifying parent identity information based on that FSA ID that was created and confirming a permanent mailing address. This is again providing consent in order for your student to be eligible for federal student aid. Again, it's information that the government already has based on filing your taxes. It's just sharing it from one department to the other. So from the IRS to the Department of Education. It will ask for some demographics about the parent. And as you can see here at the top of the screen, it says parent of the student's name. So be looking for that. Whereas the previous one said the student's name and not parent of. Again, as you can see here, there is that like progress bar across the top. So the parents only have 3 sections. So it's asking for the current marital status, the parent state of legal residence, and then your finances. If the family has ever received any federal benefits during 2022 or 2023, this is the slide that you would select it on. So that would be the earned income tax credit, federal housing assistance, free or reduced price school lunch, Medicaid, refundable credit for coverage under the qualified health plan, SNAP programs, supplemental security income, temporary assistance for needy families, or being part of the WIC program. If you and your family are eligible for any of that, then the parents would select that there. It will ask about your filing status. So this family, they did file a joint tax return with their current spouse. And then it will ask about family size. So is the parent's family size different from the number of individuals claimed on their 2022 tax return? If yes, then you would amend it to whatever your family situation looks like. This could be dependents that, like say your parents as the grandparents of the student are living in the home and you're providing assistance for them and you didn't claim them on your taxes, but they are considered dependents living in the home as part of your family size. This could be something that you list there. This is something that might need to be verified by colleges, so just something to take into consideration there. It will also ask the number in college. That is something that is being changed throughout the calculation of creating the student aid index number. Previously, that was factored into the calculation. Moving forward, it will not be factored into the calculation, but is still legally required to be asked based on the laws that created the FAFSA process. So it will be on there. You've probably heard that, but it just won't be calculated or won't be used in that calculation. It will ask for 2022 parent tax return information. So did you receive any earned income tax credits? Did you pay any taxes on the amount of grants, scholarships, or AmeriCorps benefits? And then did you have any foreign earned income exclusions? If you received any child support for that student, parent assets, current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts, current net worth of businesses and investment farms, and current net worth of investments, including real estate, but excluding the primary residence. So if you only own one property and you live in that property, then you do not need to include that real estate there. But say you have a rental or an Airbnb or something that your family uses as secondary income or a vacation home, things like that, then that second location or second home would need to be included in that real estate. Another thing to mention here is 529 plans. Something that has been clarified in the last month or so is that if the parent is the owner of a 529 plan and they have multiple children and multiple 529 plans, they only need to list the 529 plan, which this student's FAFSA, if they would be receiving that 529 plan. So again, I'll use my family as an example. I have 2 sisters, so previously, my parents would have to list all 3 amounts of 529 plans on the FAFSA form. Moving forward, they would only need to list mine on my form, my sister Katie on her form, and then my sister Margaret on her form. For other parent information, it will just ask to verify since the student has likely already invited the other parent to contribute, but it will ask for the first name, last name, date of birth, social security number, and email address. If the parents file taxes separately or a divorce situation, something like that, then this is when the second parent would go in and fill out those same questions that we already went through. But in this case, this family, the parents were married, not separated, and filed taxes jointly. So then we only had one parent information to fill out since it was all imported over with the IRS data retrieval tool. Again, taking a moment to review all this information before signing it, of those personal identifiers, demographics, and financials for the parents, and then confirming that all of that information is accurate as possible and signing that form for the student. So what happens next? There will be a confirmation email that the family or the parents or the contributors have completed their section of the form. In 1 to 3 days, the student will receive a notification that their FAFSA form was processed and sent to the student's schools. We are unsure at this time as to when we will be receiving those information from the federal government, as they have not shared a plan with us just yet on how they're going to send it to us. But we will be in contact with you and your family, if specifically if you're applying to SLUH. Our counselors will be in contact with you to say, great, we've received your form, we'll be sending an offer soon. Or we have already sent you an offer, stuff like that. But as of right now, it's quite up in the air, as it was for the last couple of weeks, as to when the FAFSA would be released. At least we have this now, which is pretty exciting, so that y'all are able to get it together. Some takeaways from when filing the FAFSA form that is based on prior year tax and income information. So the 24-25 FAFSA will ask for information from 2022. It's important to establish an FSA ID for both the student and parent prior to filing the FAFSA, and all contributors, parents, and students must provide consent to be eligible for federal student aid and have that student aid index be calculated. Each question throughout the form has a little question mark hover text right next to it that will tell you exactly what information they're looking for in that section of the form. And previously we were recommending filing early, definitely recommending as of right now by February 1st because of the priority deadlines. However, we do know that there are errors happening with the form as it is in a soft launch period, and federal student aid is doing their best to keep up with the errors and make changes and kind of help everything go a little bit more smoothly. So definitely be prepared for any of that as you get ready to file the form. What happens next? You will receive a FAFSA submission summary from a federal processor. You're going to want to review that for important information and accuracy of data, but hopefully you've already reviewed it prior to submitting, so you know that it's accurate. Colleges, so SLUH, for example, will receive what's called an ISER, an Institutional Student Information Record, which is just generated by the FAFSA. It's just what we receive in order to determine aid. We will match that against our admission records for financial aid applications and determine aid eligibility. And then we will send those offers to admitted students who have completed all required financial aid forms. So what those offers will look like, it'll include your scholarships, grants, loans, and work opportunities based on the FAFSA, and it'll be sent out by schools after students are admitted and the FAFSA is received. I'm sure your students have probably started receiving some admission notifications. I know that SLUH sent out 1,000 or thousands or something like that in December. I remember getting notifications of that, and they're sending them out continuously. So I know that your students are getting admitted to schools, but we have to receive the FAFSA information before we can send you those offers. As of right now, we're anticipating sending out offers in March, April-ish. And that's a timeline that SLUH has always stuck by. But I know other schools might have sent them out previously, like earlier in the year, and then are now getting backed up to that March, April deadline simply because we're waiting on the Department of Education. Something that your student will be eligible for after filing the FAFSA is the federal direct student loans. Every student is eligible for the direct unsubsidized loan of $5,500. So that total amount for their freshman year. It is not based on need. It does have an interest rate for this current year of 23-24 of 5.5%. Repayment begins 6 months after graduation or falling below half-time status. And then those amounts are increased for sophomore, junior, and senior year to $6,500 and then $7,500 and $7,500. Based on filing the FAFSA and the student's need, 50 or 3,500 of the 5,500 could be eligible for a subsidized loan, meaning that it will not accrue interest while the student is in school. It is based on need, and the interest rate is the same, so that 5.5%, but again, not accruing interest while the student is in school. Repayment again will begin 6 months after graduation, and then those amounts increase up to $4,500, $5,500, and $5,500 for their sophomore, junior, and senior years. A timeline for the senior year: fall's already passed, so hopefully they've applied to their different schools and gone on those college visits. Hopefully you've already created those FSA IDs so that you are ready to submit the FAFSA now. Receiving and reviewing award notices will take place this spring, and then May 1st is the deposit deadline and accepting any of that financial aid. May through June, you'll want to make a plan to cover remaining balance, apply for any Parent Plus loans or private loans, complete the master promissory note and loan entrance counseling if accepting those federal student loans. And then July and August is registering for classes, finalizing payment arrangements, and moving in. One thing to take into consideration now is to have an open and honest conversation with your students about financing a college education, what that's going to look like, if it's all on the student, if it's all on the parents, how much the student and or parents can afford, if it's a combination, things like that. With those financial aid offers, that remaining balance that's listed on the offer is the balance for 1 year. So say it's a balance of $10,000 for their freshman year. You can anticipate that it's going to be a balance again of $10,000 for their sophomore, junior, and senior year. So $40,000 over the term of 4 years. If it's going to take longer than 4 years, then something to factor in. If it's going to take less, then again, something to factor in. But that financial aid offer and that final remaining balance is something that you can anticipate for 4 years. So if you're like, oh, I can do 10,000, you have to remember that it's actually 40,000 over the course of those 4 years. So what now? Create that FSA ID if you haven't already. File the FAFSA. Have a family conversation about paying for college. Utilize any net price calculators. Every institution that accepts federal aid must have those on their website. I know that we worked on ours in the fall and got that up and running with numbers from 23-24. Those, like the different bills, tuition rates, things like that will fluctuate a little bit, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what to expect in financial aid from schools. And then talking to your high school counselors about any scholarship opportunities. So then I can see that the chat has 22 different comments in it just from my screen. But so I am going to go ahead and share this last slide here to let you all take a screen grab or a photo of this so that if you do have any questions after tonight, you can stop by our office in person since you're all based here in St. Louis. If you'd like to come by and ask us a couple of questions, if you want to give us a phone call or email, or our website also is a great resource. I know that Hannah and I have been working on it to update it and get it more accurate. There's also a FAFSA FAQ section on our website too. So if you have any questions beyond that. And then next week on February 10th, or not February 10th, January 10th, we will be doing this presentation as a webinar for people all across the country. So if you want to come and join that and just kind of get a refresher, or if any of the counselors, if you share this and people want to ask us questions in person or like over that, you can also share with them that link to join the webinar next week so that they can get all their questions answered then. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I can maybe help answer some questions if there are any, and then also let Hannah take over if she's got some questions that she has seen come through that she'd want to answer out loud for the group.
Yeah, we just got a lot of questions about 529 plans. So just want to reiterate those for the group, just to make sure that everybody has that information. So for 529 plans, regardless of if the 529 plan is in the parent or the student name as the owner on the account, they'll be listed as a parent asset. And you would only have to report the value of that student's 529 plan that you're filling out that specific FAFSA for. So as Aaron mentioned, if you have multiple students that all have 529 plans, you don't have to report the full value of those 529 plans for all of your students. I did want to also, that also includes, UGMA, UTMA accounts to the benefit of the student. It includes not just 529 plans, but any qualified educational benefits account. And so if you're unsure about what exactly that looks like, or if you have accounts and you're unsure where to put them, there are cover help text, little question mark bubbles to the side of every single question on the FAFSA where you can get a little bit more information about what they want you to include and what can be excluded. Specifically that the investment net worth, that is one that we always get questions about. So that's an important one to kind of go over just in a little bit more detail. I also want to just make it clear that the glitches right now are happening typically with some pretty niche situations. So I can share this federal student aid partners. They kind of have a FAFSA issue alerts page where they're kind of keeping tabs on questions or bugs that have come up and the status or workaround for those while they're working on, making sure that those issues are solved. As far as I know, it's not a like guarantee that you will not be able to get in and have that progress be saved if you've saved and want to go back to it later. There are some, like I said, some kind of niche situations, like parent who re-enters saved FAFSA form must add country again to be able to submit form. So they're kind of very specific. But if you are worried about not being able to get in, I would suggest potentially waiting for a lesser trafficked time, like maybe like really early in the morning, not an evening or weekend, to try and get back into that form and see if your progress is saved. Because they are delayed in actually processing FAFSAs and sending them to the schools, you won't be able to make corrections right away. So again, as Erin said, you just want to make sure that you're checking that summary when it gives you that summary of all of the answers that you've submitted as part of your section before you submit. Make sure that everything is as correct and accurate as of the day that you file the FAFSA. And then eventually you will be able to make corrections, but that will just further slow down the process of your student being able to get their financial aid offer and that sort of thing. I also saw a question kind of about the order in which you start the form. So either the parent or the student can go in and start a FAFSA form. If you go in as the parent and start the FAFSA form and you complete your parent section, you will just invite your student to be a contributor to their own FAFSA form. If the student starts and fills out all of their information, they're going to invite you as the parent to be a contributor to their form. So you can start either way. There, to my knowledge, is no deleting progress or deleting forms unless you let it sit inactive for 45 days. And that's when the system would delete it for you, and then you would have to start all over again. But you can go in as either role first, the parent or the student. And because that contributor invitation needs the name, the date of birth, the social security number, and an active email address, typically, I mean, we've been kind of recommending to families that it makes a little bit more sense for the parent to go ahead and start, because they're likely going to have access or know off the top of their head their student's date of birth and social security number, whereas your student might not have that information as readily available for you. So that's kind of our recommendation so far, just knowing kind of how that contributor piece works. But it's totally up to you depending on, what your personal preference is. We also learned today that there is some planned maintenance on the IRS website. Erin just posted this in the chat. So this Saturday, from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m., so Saturday morning, the IRS website will be down, meaning that direct data exchange will not be able to happen, and you will have to manually put in your 2022 tax information. So steer clear of that time window, because it's a lot easier for you to be able to provide consent and have that information come over directly from that direct data exchange, rather than manually inputting your AGI and the taxes that you paid and your wages that you earned for 2022.
Hannah, there was a question about mailing in the form.
Yes. So the paper FAFSA is available for families that are having extensive issues, maybe establishing an FSA ID or submitting the form. I will say, I know that it might be really frustrating sitting in a waiting room, having long wait times, seeing pages just kind of cycle through and having to, trudge through the form as it buffers. But the paper FAFSA will take even longer to process. So highly, highly, highly recommend trudging through the web version. That's going to be a lot easier. And I say that with a grain of salt, but it's going to be able to be processed quicker than a paper FAFSA will be. They are devoting all of their resources right now to making sure that the web version is what it should be. And so you should not be filling out the paper FAFSA except in dire or extreme extenuating circumstances. The most recent one looks like experiences screen cycling, not advancing through or allowing you to complete all the screens. You should be able to save and re-enter the application with all previous info saved. Of course, no guarantees. But as we said, I would highly recommend trying on a lower traffic time or what might be a lower traffic time. So like early in the morning on a weekday, potentially getting back in. I have been trying periodically throughout the workday, Wednesday and today, to go through the form and kind of see the new functionality. And I've been able to get through and flow through the form just fine. Knock on wood. So during those potentially lower traffic times, I feel like would be the best time to go in and do that. So checking and savings account. So there are 3 questions in the asset section that you'll need to answer. So you'll need to answer value of cash checking and savings accounts as one. So all of that would be added up and put in that first field. And then you'll report the value of investments. And so that's really the bulk of what we've been talking about when we were talking about assets. That's your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, 529 plans. All of that is, investments. And then you would also include that third question is investment net worth of businesses or investment farms. So those are 3 separate questions that you'll have to answer there in that asset question or asset section for both the student and the parent. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen any new ones come through.
Well, we all here at SLUH High would just like to say thank you so very much for your time, your patience, for all the work you're doing. We recognize that the FAFSA is not your form and you're trying to deal with all the implementations of it just as our families are. So sincerely, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And I will do my best to get this presentation out to families sometime tomorrow. But they do have your contact information if they have any direct questions. Everybody have a wonderful evening and I hate to say, but good luck on the FAFSA on both sides of the desk. Thank you.
Thank you.